Oh, hello. Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Week going by pretty fast. Majesty Gayle here. I am a real estate developer based out of Atlanta. I've been building everything from single family homes to multifamily, office, retail, you name it. I've worked on fire stations where firefighters work out of. I've done some of everything. So very experienced in everything real estate development. And today I'm actually doing a series where I get a lot of questions from people. And I decided to turn those questions into separate master classes so I can answer the question for the general public, maybe add some value to somebody. If anybody hops on and has any questions as well, I'll be glad to answer some questions while I'm on the live. So this won't take too long. It's a crash course. There's no way that I can give all the information that there is to give in one video, but I am going to go into a deep dive on this on every week on Wednesdays to give a free masterclass just on YouTube. So we'll see. Let's see how this goes. But anyway, so today's masterclass is about. I get the question about how do I buy property with little to no money down? How do I buy property with little to no money down? The biggest barrier that most people have when it comes to real estate investing, any investing, but definitely real estate investing, is money. They're like, I don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions to put into a real estate deal. And to be honest with you, most of the people in real estate don't have that or didn't have that when they got into it. So you don't need that money to get into real estate. You don't. I promise you, you don't. And I am going to give you at least a dozen different ways to get into real estate or to buy property with little to no money down. And I mean, when I say no money down, I mean it can happen to the point where when you close on a property, money is given to you. So not only did you not put any money up, but you made money and didn't put any money in. So that changes things. So any questions that you guys have, feel free to drop it in the chat, and I'll just kind of answer them as they come along. Just bear with me because YouTube live isn't my thing, so I'm still catching on to how it all works. But I like to start this off with a scripture specifically to kind of back what I'm going to say. And that scripture is Philippians 4:19. And let me read it directly. So it says, "And my God will meet all your needs according to the riches of his glory in Christ Jesus." So basically, it's just saying that God will meet all of your needs. The idea is that the provision is already there. The resources are already there. We just have to tap into it. That's all that we're doing here. And that just requires kind of a perspective shift. Sometimes it's things that were already in your atmosphere, in your universe. You just got to tap into it. So I'm here to help you guys learn kind of how to, how to tap into that. So I'll start with my a quick project or property. That the first property I did, I didn't put any money into it. I didn't have to, and I'll explain kind of how that happened. Real estate takes money, but it doesn't take your money. Most real estate is bought with loans. That's the bank's money. That's the financial institution's money. It's not your money. That's exactly how I did my first deal. I started out wholesaling, which just means finding deals for investors like I am now, and getting a fee for those deals. So I would find deals, bring it to buyers, and they will buy it. There was one deal that I found that was just amazing deal. It made a lot of sense, at least to me at the time. It turned out to be a pretty challenging project, but I decided to keep that deal for myself. I didn't take it to any buyers because I ran my numbers and I saw how profitable it was. I saw, the price I was buying it for was a good price. And I decided to go ahead and jump in and invest, even though I didn't necessarily have the money to do the project myself. The property was about $100,000 to buy, and it needed about another 100 and let's just say 125,000 to fix it up. So it was a pretty big fix and flip. It was 6 bedrooms, 3 baths, so a good size, property, or what have you. And it needed to be torn down to the studs. But ultimately, what I did was I got the wholesale contract, or I got the contract on it, and got a hard money loan. And this hard money lender actually covered 100% of the cost. So they covered the cost for me to buy the property, and they covered the cost of the construction budget. They didn't give it to me all at once. You have to prove yourself. With that 100, and I forget what I said, 125, $150,000 construction budget, they maybe give you 5,000, 10,000. You do some work, they give you another 5,000, 10,000, 20,000. And that's how you get through a construction budget with a hard money lender. But my first project, I didn't put any money out of pocket. And I was able to, get them to also cover the construction loan. So just a quick, story about how I was able to do it. And I know that you can do it as well. And I know it's possible. And I'll give you, at least a dozen ways of how to do it. So let's go ahead and get started. Each one of these that I tell you is a tool. It's not necessarily a shortcut, but you do want to be aware of all the tools available. Every deal is different depending on if you're buying for yourself to live in, or if you're buying an investment property, things like that. But so some of these apply to different situations. So the first one is FHA loans, and I know most of us have heard about those at the very least, even if you just heard of it in the news. But FHA loans are specifically to purchase a property. Specifically to purchase a property that you're going to live in. They're expecting you to live in that house for the most part. Now they have introduced some new programs that include small multifamily, 2 to 4 units, that you can now use FHA loans for too. If for a single family, they only want 3.5% down. That means they're going to give you 96.5% of the money you need to buy the house. So that's a lot of the money that's needed. And then there's also down payment assistance programs that most people qualify for based on their income, that will cover that other 3.5%. So you end up being able to purchase a home for 100% of the cost being covered by the FHA loan and the down payment assistance combined. And many people use that method to get into homes. So that's one way to buy a property for yourself with no money out of pocket. There are some requirements for FHA loans. They're very lenient, in my opinion, in terms of credit and income and things like that. I think it's probably one of the most lenient programs in existence. So yeah, that's one way to buy a property with no money down. Also, they have VA loans. I know so many people in the military, for some reason, they don't take advantage of them. And maybe somebody can chime in on why. Maybe they will be in the military and not tap into these VA loans, but they're 0% down. I guess it's a way that they give back to those that have served, or at least how the program was supposed to be. But basically 0% down, similar to FHA in terms of they expect you to live in the home, but 0% down. I mean, you can't really beat that. You get a good interest rate and you get 0% down, but that's specifically for veterans and active duty military. They also have USDA loans, and those are 0% down as well. And the USDA loans are for rural properties specifically. So people have a misunderstanding about rural. When you think rural, you think country, you think the boonies, all that stuff, like which is true. It is true. But I think that people have a misunderstanding of how much of the country is the country and the boonies. It's over 90% of the country, meaning under 90% of the country is urban, like city, buildings and all of that. So 90% plus of the United States qualifies for USDA loans. So when they say they'll give you 1 and 0 down, that means that they're covering 90% plus of the United States. So no, you can't get one in like New York City or something like that. But on the outskirts, you can. There's some requirements around population. So that's USDA loans. Let's go ahead and move on. So another one is seller financing. And that is essentially when the person is selling the property also gives you the loan to buy the property. And that is very common. It happens all the time, especially in commercial real estate. They typically some seller there's typically some seller financing in the capital stack and in somewhere in the funding. There's usually some form of seller financing, but it never hurts to ask a seller of anything. Will you accept payments? You don't have to ask them exactly like that. There's many ways to introduce the concept. Some of them offer it just in the listing. But seller financing is one way to basically have the seller be the bank for you. You don't have to go to a bank or anything. You can also usually close much quicker as well because you don't have to go through bank processes and such. So seller financing is probably one of the main ways that I get 100% financing on my projects, especially when you can combine a lot of these different sources that I'm talking about. You can combine them and then get the 100%. So say the seller maybe only gives you 20% or 30%. You may be able to get a bank loan for the other 70%. Now you have 100% financing covering your project. The next one is subject to buying a project subject to, and what that means is subject to the existing mortgage. This is essentially where you take over the seller's current mortgage and you make the payments for them. So if they have a mortgage on their home, they're paying $1,000 a month. You can come in and start making those payments from the present, moving forward in the future, and work a deal out with them. And now that is your property. You just now make those payments. That's your obligation at this point. There's some legalities behind that you have to work out, obviously, but ultimately you come in and take over the payments. You can offer the seller a lump sum payment or something like that in order to get into the agreement, but that's essentially how that works. So you benefit from the mortgage, the existing mortgage that the owner already has, and depending on how old that mortgage is, that's a big benefit right now to buy properties because interest rates are high. So if you're able to take over their previous mortgage at the interest rate that they had, then it's a really good look for you. It could work out better for your project. Another option is lease options, or rent to own is another way that is referred to, and is exactly how it sounds. You rent it. The seller sells it to you in the form of renting it to you until you're ready to buy. That can be anywhere from a year, 2, 3 years that you pay a rental amount, and at the end of the rental term, you purchase the property. Or it could be long term to where you rent to own for a long period of time. That's what they do with furniture. They do it with vehicles. They do it with a lot of different things. So same concept here, but it's a way to do it with no money out of pocket. You don't have to bring a huge down payment or something like that. And these types of things sellers are open to. You just have to ask. You just have to ask. That's all you got to do is just ask. Another option to purchase properties with little to no money down is assumable loans. This is kind of similar to the subject to the existing mortgage, but a little different. You're actually assuming the loan that the seller has, meaning that you're going through the entire application process that they went through to get that loan so that you can now move that loan to your profile or what have you. So that it's a little bit more intricate, and like that's also more common in commercial real estate, but it is possible in single family real estate as well. And you just have to ask. You just ask if that's something that they'd be open to doing. They may want a fee for doing so. But a lot of sellers just, for the most part, want to dispose of their property. They don't want to make the payment. They don't want to have to make that payment again. They don't want to have to deal with the upkeep, the taxes, different things like that. So they're open to a lot more things than you think. You just have to find whatever pain point that they're dealing with and offer a solution for that. That doesn't always mean that you have to give them a bunch of money up front. Another option is private money lenders. And private money lenders are people that have people with money. It's people with a little bit of extra money. It could be doctors, some type of professional, somebody who came into some money, maybe a settlement, just worked for it, whatever it is. They have a business and they're looking to diversify into real estate, but they don't have the time to get into it themselves. The private money lenders are made up of a lot of different type of people, but basically they're people that have money to the side that they will lend out. And they just act as a bank even though they're a regular person. There's a lot of private money lenders out there helping get deals done. It's just a matter of, once again, networking, making those connections, letting people know what you do, and, pitching them different deals or what have you. But it's really about relationships at that point. But there's a lot of private money lenders out there. Some of them even advertise, which kind of makes them a little bit more of a commercial lender. But still, the idea still stands. So you can go to like networking groups, real estate groups, things like that, and you'll see people who are willing to lend money for the right project, and they will give you 100% of what's needed for your project. Another option is hard money lenders. They're more commercial lenders. They're outfits that put their money out towards real estate projects. They typically take more risk than other banks will. Their money is also pretty expensive, but their money is fast. So, it just depends on what you need, what you're trying to get done. But ultimately, they lend on real estate deals. They usually have a criteria that they want it to fit within. Things like that. They're going to want to make sure that your project is viable, is profitable, it's a real situation, it doesn't have a lot of red flags, things like that. But they will give you 100% of the money needed, not only to buy the property, but also to fix it up. So, yeah, they hard money lenders. That's what they do. That's what I did on the project I told you about. The first flip I ever did was done with a hard money lender that gave me 100% of the price. And I'll tell you guys who it is at the end of the video, just to make sure you stick through it. They're still in business. They're still doing it. So another solution is partnerships and joint ventures. Basically bringing in a partner. Whatever you don't have, you bring in somebody that does. If that's money, then fine. There's people with money. Just because you may not have access to it at the time. There's people that do. So it's just a matter of networking, talking to others, letting them know what you do, letting them know what you have, making sure that what you have is valuable to them, because why else would they get involved? And making sure that the cake is big enough for everybody to have a slice, including yourself, but including them as well. So everybody wants to, have a slice and do well and benefit from the project. If that's the case, then you'll most likely be able to find someone to partner with you, a joint venture with you on a project. Another option is acquiring property through a 501c3 or a church. Plenty of churches own a lot of property, as I'm sure you guys know. They develop property. They acquire and develop property. They get better terms and better rates and things like that than most developers or investors. Nonprofits don't typically have to pay taxes, so there's some benefits there. But that's another way to acquire property with little to no money down. So it just depends on what your goals are. But if for some reason you're able to operate a 501c3, or you do operate a church or are involved with the church, you can definitely purchase property with little to no money down. And nonprofits don't just have to be charities. Membership organizations are nonprofits. So there's a lot of different ways to approach it. Another option is grant programs. There's a lot of grant programs out there. One of the biggest ones that people are aware of is Habitat for Humanity. Where you put in the work, you kind of put in the sweat equity and help them actually build the home. But with that program, you're able to acquire a property with little to no money down. That program has been around for a long time. They've helped a lot of people. I've worked with them in a few occasions, sold them some properties, bought some properties from them as well. But yeah, so they do that all day, every day. And everyone has heard of Habitat for Humanity, but they're not the only ones that have programs like that. And they're typically some type of grant program or forgivable loan or some type of structure where consideration is given in exchange for what typically will be a down payment or money that you have to come up with. So let me see, what else do I have here? Oh, raise equity. You can raise money. That kind of could fall under the joint venture partnership situation. You raise money typically through a syndication or through a fund. And the difference between a syndication and a fund is a syndication is project by project. So each syndication typically has one address tied to it. So every project property you do would be a new syndication. And a fund is more of a vehicle where you're going and picking up a bunch of properties and just kind of putting them into this pot, or what have you. So that's the difference, but ultimately kind of the same idea. The people that put money in are usually what's called limited partners, meaning that they're partners, but they have limits on their authority and control over the project, over the investment. The general partner has more, I guess, kind of like majority control, even if they don't own the majority of the entity. So most investors, when they invest in a syndication or a fund, they're coming in as limited partners. So they're just putting money in and they're sitting in the back seat and going along for the ride. They typically have some type of voting or some type of rights to share how they feel and what they suggest. But at the end of the day, the final decision typically sits with the general partner, who could be you. So another way to do do real estate projects with no money out of pocket is to raise money through a syndication or a fund. And with that said, that's 13 different ways to do deals with little to no money out of pocket. I have experience with almost all of these. They're still doable today. Even doesn't matter who's president, doesn't matter, kind of what's going on with the economy. These things still exist. They're still being done. People are still buying property. People are still selling property. So there's really no excuse in that way. It does take a lot of effort, but all of these different ways that I mentioned are real. They can be done. They can be applied immediately to buy your first or your next property. So hopefully, that was helpful for you guys, but I want to bring it back to Philippians 4:19, we're talking about God's provision and God supplying all of our needs. The supply that God gives isn't always cash. It isn't always just here's a bag of cash. Sometimes it's a relationship. Sometimes it's a strategy or an idea. Sometimes it's just timing of something happening, in your favor. But at the end of the day, we do know that God has the ability to supply all of our needs as He is the creator of everything. So, that my overall point is just to think in that way, and you'll think of resources in order to get the funding or whatever that you need done. So I'll go through here. I saw some questions come up. I'm still learning how to use this, so just bear with me. Private investor. So I'm trying to buy a house, and it is 1.2 million for 7 rooms, 5 baths, and an office. Or should I get 8, 9? It has 5 rooms. I don't have enough information to give you any. I need to know where the property is, what you plan to do with the property. I don't know if that's a good price or not. So if you have a bid over 400K, take the big one. Twitch doesn't matter how expensive, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, I don't see any questions that I can answer immediately. So anyway, if this video brought you any value, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, share it with someone else. Please leave a comment. I appreciate it. Any feedback. I only look to get better at doing this, and I appreciate you guys for checking me out. And I will catch you on the next masterclass crash course. Have a good one. Bye, guys.